I feel the Spirit moving in me. I feel the Spirit moving in me.
So today we're talking about don't throw darts. Anybody bring them? Well, one of my favorite philosophers is George Burns. He said the secret of a good sermon is to have a good beginning and a good ending, and to have the two as close together as possible. So I'm gonna attempt to do that today. About 10 years ago, I was working in St. Louis, at Unity Church, or Unity Christ Church in St. Louis, and I was late to work. And it was a Sunday morning, and I had on my favorite Jerry Garcia tie, and I had a beautiful shirt that matched and a suit. And I am getting in my car, and I'm hurrying, and I have that trusty cup of coffee, in my to-go container. And I get on the freeway, and I'm going 70. And don't tell anybody, though. And I went to take a sip of my coffee, and the top came off. And I poured the entire cup of coffee on my $50 tie, on my dress shirt, and on my suit, right, on a Sunday morning. And I'm like, ah! And I just looked down enough to freak out, and then looked back up and saw that the traffic had stopped in front of me. There was an accident or something, and everybody was dead stopped, and I'm going 70 miles an hour, and fortunately, there was an off-ramp right to the right, so I pulled off on the off-ramp going 70 miles an hour and trying to slow down, and there was a signal like 100 yards off the highway, so there was no way that I could stop at that signal, so I decided to make a right turn and keep going, and I ran into a detour sign, right? And the detour sign took me through this area where they were doing construction on the road. And so it was a one-lane road, and it took me like 10 minutes to wind through the one-way road detour and get back on the freeway, where I am still stuck with all the people that were on the freeway. To survive, some physical and mental pain is inevitable. Have you ever noticed? It seems to me like in this journey, we get to have some pain. And it seems like it's really necessary for our physical bodies to sometimes experience pain, because that's how we know if it's time to make some changes or to do something about it, or see a doctor or change our behavior. So some physical pain is necessary. Also, it's important that we sometimes experience mental pain for the same reason. So we can choose our thoughts. If we find that we're lonely or sad or angry, then we can look at what is it that's creating those thoughts and therefore creating our life. What can we do differently to transcend our experience? The Buddha was talking to an assembly of his monks, and he was teaching the truth about the second arrow. And the Buddha said, let's back up this way. The Buddha said, if the person is struck by an arrow, is it painful? And the monk said, and then he said, and if a person is struck by a second arrow, is it even more painful? And the monk said, yes. And then the Buddha explained, in life, we cannot always control the first arrow. But the second arrow is our reaction to the first arrow. We can't always control. He calls them arrows. I'm calling them darts, because we don't have so many arrows. Well, maybe we do. I actually do have a bow and arrow, but fortunately it's safe in my storage locker. So as long as we're alive, we're going to experience uncomfortable situations and situations that don't feel so good. And the unavoidable pains of life are the first arrows, are the first dart. So for me, spilling coffee on my tie and my shirt and my pants was the first dart. Getting disturbed and angry and distracted was the second dart. That was the choice that I made in the moment, and that was what brought me pain. And fortunately, it could have been a lot worse if I didn't look up at the time that I did look up and wasn't able to get off the highway at the moment I was able to. Certainly could have caused myself and a lot of other people even more pain. Unfortunately, we are the ones that usually throw the second dart, and the person we usually throw it at is ourselves. Oftentimes, when we overreact to things, when we're holding grudges, when we're judging other people, when we're drowning in guilt. None of you ever do this stuff, right? I know I don't either. These are just examples of other people. So don't feel guilty because you don't feel these things. Dwelling on the past. We never do that, right? Or worrying about stuff that we can't control. It's other people. We're putting this out to the universe of other people, right? Because we never worry about stuff that we can't control. Or rehashing conversations that we had with other people. And saying, oh, I wish I had said that, or I wish, certainly when they said this must have been what they meant, right? And we play this game inside our head and keep sticking ourselves with a dart. You ever notice? And it seems to me that the second darts usually are more numerous than the first dart. We can have a first dart happen, and then we can go into numerous ideas, explanations, and reiterations of why that first dart happened. So this lesson is titled, Don't Throw Darts. So we can practice Buddha's arrow teaching, or second arrow teaching, by, first of all, accepting the inevitability of the first darts. They're going to happen. Stuff is going to happen to us that's going to feel uncomfortable. Yeah? It's part of our life experience. It's part of what gives us the opportunity to grow spiritually. So just accept things are going to happen. And isn't that great? Thanks, John. I appreciate your honesty. So try not to get embarrassed or angry when the first darts happen. This is about awareness. If we are aware that first darts are going to come, when they come, we can go, oh, I understand what this is. This is the first dart. How great! I get to choose how I'm going to react to the first dart. And then the second thing we can do is to observe second darts. And it's a lot more fun to observe other people's second darts than it is to observe our own. Yeah? But it's a good thing to be mindful of. It's like, oh, when that person goes off, you don't go broadcasting it to everybody, by the way. But you might notice, oh, that's interesting. This person's having a difficult time in this situation. They have received the first dart. Oh, and look at how they're reacting. Interesting. And then we can take that learning and turn it around. So when the first dart happens to us, we can go, oh, I forgot I'm playing darts. And I just received the first dart. So, okay. Which leads us to the third point, which is to relax. Awareness is often the first step in any kind of healing or transformation. And this is really about building our awareness. Being aware that, the first dart got me. Second dart is I had the ability or the opportunity to react. And the third thing is just to relax. Okay, so this is what's happening. We have like a half a second between the time where we have the thought to react and when we actually react. And if we can take that moment to just take a breath. Okay, this is how I choose to react, by taking a breath and relaxing. Is this easy? No, it's not easy. And I think that's the truth of it, is to remember to do this when it happens. And that's why this is all about practice. The spiritual practice is a practice. I've never understood why they call a medical practice a practice. I hate to think that a doctor is practicing on me, but this is a spiritual practice. And the next thing we can do is to focus on what is good. We're talking about this a lot in Rick Hanson's book. It's to be able to focus on what is good and enlarge in that and pay attention to that and bring your awareness. And even he talks about turning up the volume on what is good in the moment. There's a story that I like about a young boy, and he is walking home from school, and he's got his bat and his baseball. And he takes the ball, and he throws the ball up in the air, and he goes, "I'm the greatest hitter in the world." And he misses. Oh, he bends down, picks up the ball, and he says, "Okay, here he comes, the greatest hitter in the world." And he misses it again. And he bends down, picks it up, and says, "Okay, here he comes, ladies and gentlemen, to bat. He's the number one hitter in the whole world. He's got the greatest average in the whole world." Throws the ball up, misses it. And he says, "But he is the greatest pitcher you ever saw." Focus on the good. Find something in the moment to focus on. Rick Hanson talks about our negativity bias. We sort of have a bias towards thinking about things that are negative. It's just the way that our brains have evolved over time, because we used to have to be so afraid and so defensive that our brains actually are like, he says, that we're like Velcro to negative thoughts and Teflon to good thoughts. So we have a tendency to hang on to the negative thoughts for fear of life, so we can be defensive. And what we want to do is to focus on the positive things that are happening, to be like this young man and stay positive. And the third thing we can do, or the fifth thing we can do, is to not put more logs on the fire. When you recognize that you have stuck yourself with the second dart, is not to put more logs on the fire. Don't turn up the volume on the negativity. Focus on what is good. And all this is about awareness, to realize, because that negativity factor wants to build it up, wants to throw gasoline on it. Have you ever noticed? Like the smallest thing can be huge and cause this huge reaction. And it doesn't have to be. All that causes stress and negative hormones in our bodies and wear and tear on our bodies and mind. So don't put the log on the fire. So I got back in the traffic. I was 20 minutes late for church, but so was everybody else. 80% of the people got there at the same time I did. So all of the stuff that I went through, this frazzled mess that I made of myself, because of the second dart that I threw at myself, So all of the suffering that I had to deal with was of my own imagination. And because I threw that second dart at myself. As the saying goes, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So I invite you to close your eyes and take a deep breath, breathing into this moment. And perhaps to place this teaching of the Buddha, of the second arrow, someplace in the storehouse of your mind. And to let all these words go. And just to be present right now. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing into that place of relaxation and peace. Perhaps to remember a time when you, in a place where you felt most peaceful. Perhaps at the beach or in the woods, on a mountain, by a river. And feel how you felt. And bring this feeling into this moment. And imagine that you can even turn up the volume on this feeling. And even feel more peaceful, more relaxed. More joyful, more loving. Perhaps you can feel the presence. Be the presence. And maybe the next time you realize that you're hit by that first dart, that you can go to this place and be present to the presence. And so it is. Amen.
Where I they're all raised.